What is going on, guys? My name is Stuber, and I'm here to break down this 9-game NBA slate on Draftkings and PrizePicks.com. If you guys are new here, welcome. If you guys are a returning viewer, welcome back. Hitting that like button, subscribing, and commenting is all greatly appreciated. That is the #1 way of supporting me. If you guys want to know exactly what I'm playing on FanDuel, DraftKings, PrizePicks.com, you guys can join my Patreon. That is linked down below. $25 for the rest of the month of November. But again, guys, this is a primer video. I think it's a good way to start off your research for the day. I'm going to be going over the injury news as well as recent events for each of these teams. But it is vital to be in the live stream an hour before lock at 5 p.m. Central Time. I will be in there breaking down all of the latest breaking news. And with there being 9 games on the slate, we are bound to get a plentiful amount of injury news throughout the day. And I will be there to break that down, as well as answer as many questions as I possibly can in that hour-long live stream. Make sure to subscribe so you guys are notified when I do go live. You guys can hit the notification bell down below too. Make sure you guys get notified when that goes live. But yeah, let's just jump right into the slate. So we will start off with the Brooklyn Nets versus the Detroit Pistons. And again, guys, to make these videos a bit quicker, I'm going to kind of just like run through quickly the teams that I'm not really considering players in, and that's going to be the case for one of these teams at least. We get the Brooklyn Nets versus the Detroit Pistons at 211 over under. The Nets are currently 10.5 point favorites, so some blowout risk in this game. They're going to be without Kyrie Irving and Nicholas Claxton. But, you know, the rotations for the Nets are pretty sporadic each and every game. So outside of Kevin Durant, James Harden, it's really hard to pin down any of these value plays that you really are interested in. I do prefer James Harden to Kevin Durant moving forward, but not really considering anybody from that Nets team. On the Detroit Pistons team, Chris Smith is out. Killian Hayes, actually just before recording this video, popped up on the injury report as questionable. He was injured last game, ended up coming back playing through it. I assume he plays, but if he is ruled out, that's going to leave more ball handling duties for Cade Cunningham, because we saw in the preseason in the first couple games that Killian Hayes will handle the ball a lot more than you would imagine with Cade Cunningham on the court. But yeah, I mean, I think you probably just go ahead and play Cade Cunningham. He's completely off his minutes restrictions. We saw that yesterday where he exceeded 30 minutes. And then he's off of the restrictions of only playing one end of the back-to-back, this being the second end of a back-to-back. Normally we would expect him to sit here, but he is going to give it a go. I expect him to play 30-31 minutes in this game. In game 1, he had a 22.9% usage rating. Game 2, he had a 24.1% usage rating. In game 3, he had a 36.3% usage rating. So, you know, his usage is on the rise. He's the clear #1 guy on this team. He is shooting a low 29.4 true shooting percentage so far this year. Obviously, that's going to rise a lot higher in college. He's just now getting acclimated to things. But assuming he plays around 30 minutes, it's hard for me to not play him at $4,600. We're going to see him in the 6 and 7K range at some point this year. So we're getting quite the discount at $4,600. Move over to the Memphis Grizzlies versus the Washington Wizards at 220.5 over under. Wizards are currently 1.5 point favorites. The Grizzlies are going to be without Dillon Brooks. We finally saw the minutes come up for Jaren Jackson Jr. last game and gets the best front court matchup in the entire league. Played 30 minutes, put up over 40 fantasy points, and he's only $5,600, so we're getting a pretty severe discount on Jaren Jackson Jr. One of my favorite tournament options on the slate. I also think Desmond Bane is a very good play at $5,100. And then in the same vein as Jaren Jackson Jr. with his matchup, Steven Adams, just as great of a matchup. Should play 30 plus minutes in this game and is only $4,700. So I like Adams a lot. I like Jaren Jackson Jr. a lot. I like Desmond Bane. John Morant, you know, he's playing bigger minutes than ever this year. So I am inclined to get some exposure to him, especially given the matchup. I mean, it's just so good in this pace-up spot against the Washington Wizards. Like all of those guys a good bit. The Washington Wizards are going to be without Thomas Bryant, Rui Hachimura, Anthony Gill, Cassius Winston, and Davis Bertans. Kyle Kuzma was injured last game, ended up missing the rest of it, was questionable yesterday, but is off of the injury report as of this morning, so he should be giving it a go. And then Daniel Gafford, ever since coming back from injury, has looked good, but not really in conditioning shape right now. So at least for the foreseeable future, Montrezl Harrell has a pretty strong stranglehold on the lion's share of minutes, of the center minutes rather. So until that changes, I'm not really considering Daniel Gafford. Although he is $4,400, he could get it done in 22 minutes. But there are so many good center options on this slate. Not really considering Daniel Gafford or anybody from the Washington Wizards at that. The San Antonio Spurs versus the Orlando Magic at 213.5 over under. The Spurs are currently 3.5 point favorites. Jakob Poeltl and Zach Collins are both out. Drew Eubanks ended up starting last game in replacement of Jakob Poeltl. He ended up playing 19 minutes, while Thaddeus Young played the backup center role, played 22 minutes himself. But they closed the last 6.5 minutes of the game with Kellen Johnson at the 5. Given the matchup against a small Dallas Mavericks team without Kristaps Porzingis, Magic run two centers with Wendell Carter Jr. and Mo Bamba. So I think there is a larger likelihood in this game that they split all 48 of those center minutes between between Drew Eubanks and Thaddeus Young. I definitely prefer Thaddeus Young of the two. If he is given the minutes, I mean, he is a legitimate triple-double threat. Kellen Johnson dealt with early foul trouble last game. Like I mentioned earlier, he ended up closing the game out as the closing center when they went small ball against the Mavericks. He's $5,200. You know, his upside in minutes just raises with no Jakob Poeltl because they will go small if they have to without Jakob. So I don't mind Keldon Johnson there. DeJounte Murray, you know, I love him in a vacuum today. But he's $9,100 over here on Draftkings. If you want to get some exposure to DeJounte Murray, I would do so over on Prize Picks. The over 38 fantasy points looks really, really nice. It's only a 3.5 point spread. As long as this game is competitive, it's hard for me to imagine him not hitting this over number. So I do like DeJounte Murray over here on Prize Picks. On the Orlando Magic side, not really considering anybody, although Markelle Fultz, Jonathan Isaac, Michael Carter-Williams, Etuan Moore, they are all out. Gary Harris is questionable. He missed last game, was injured in the game before. Really only considering Jalen Suggs here, given the prices of everybody. Everything is just so inflated on the Magic side for whatever reason. Jalen Suggs only $5,100. Continues to lead this team with a 26.7% usage rating, but we know the deal with him. His minutes are pretty sporadic. Never really know where they're going to go, but the upside is definitely there at $5,100. We get the New York Knicks versus the Milwaukee Bucks at 217.5 over under. Bucks are currently 4-point favorites. No injuries on the side of the New York Knicks. Nerlens Noel and Taj Gibson both returned last game. They are going to play in this game as well. Nerlens Noel played 18 minutes as the direct backup to Mitchell Robinson, and Taj Gibson was a DNP, so it's pretty clear that Nerlens Noel is playing ahead of Taj Gibson. Don't really expect Taj to really get in the rotation unless we see some injuries again. And then Mitchell Robinson, he's only $4,500, should continue to see 28 to 30 minutes. You know, I think there is a pretty good chance that we see Julius Randle close this game out at the 5, so that would be less minutes to guys like Mitchell Robinson and Nerlens Noel. Not really considering anybody from this New York Knicks team, given the severity of the matchup in the Milwaukee Bucks and how good they are defensively. The Bucks are going to be without Brook Lopez, Chris Middleton, and Dante DiVincenzo. Drew Holiday is probable to return here. You know, I wouldn't expect them to bring... They've been really cautious with Drew, and so I wouldn't expect them to bring him back unless he was fully healthy. I'm expecting 30 to 32 minutes out of him. You know, with him being back, he's obviously going to go back into the starting lineup, and that's going to bump George Hill down. He is no longer in consideration. But if you go back to since the beginning of last year with no Chris Middleton on the court, Drew Holiday averages 1.29 fantasy points per minute, and so I love the over prop on Drew Holiday. I just think it's not up to date. I guess it's probably pretty cautious with how many minutes he's going to end up playing, but I think he's going to play 30 to 32 minutes, and like I just mentioned, nearly 1.3 fantasy points per minute with no Chris Middleton on the court, and his minutes are going to be largely staggered with Giannis Antetokounmpo, so they have one of them out there at all times. So I love the over on Drew Holiday over here on PrizePicks, over 31 fantasy points. And then Giannis Antetokounmpo. There is plenty of value plays on this slate, so it makes it very, very easy to get up to Giannis Antetokounmpo, the clear #1 pay-up option on the entire slate. We also saw Bobby Portis's minutes elevate to 22 minutes last game. Obviously a very good per minute producer, only $4,700. Probably not getting to all that much of him, but I did want to mention him if you guys are interested in a low-owned tournament option. We get the Cleveland Cavaliers versus the Toronto Raptors at 205 over under. Raptors are currently 5.5 point favorites. You know, the total dropped 7.5 points since open, despite only 15% of the bets being placed on the under. So big, sharp money coming in on the under. I think this is going to be a very low scoring game, which I hate to see because I like a lot of the players in this game. On the Cavs side, they're going to be without Kevin Love, Larry Markkinen, and Isaac Okoro. JB Bickerstaff, the head coach of the Cleveland Cavaliers, mentioned before last game that they wanted to add players to the rotation, but that was not the case. They continue to run just an 8-man rotation with Dean Wade in the starting lineup in place of Larry Markkinen. He only played low 20s minutes, but man, the starters outside of Dean Wade plus Ricky Rubio off the bench are going to play such massive minutes. So I really like Jared Allen. Jared Allen has dominated in these last 2 games. Now he gets a very good matchup against an undersized Toronto Raptors front court with Ken Burch and Precious Achiuwa. Jared Allen should be able to abuse this team, and now with no Kevin Love, his minutes are even more secure. Should be playing mid to high 30s minutes here. Love Jared Allen. And then Ricky Rubio, you know, we were expecting him to play 30 plus minutes. That's why we liked him so much, but he just had an off night. He ended up playing 31 minutes, but shot poorly, shot 0 for 7. But his price dropped to $5,300, so I think he is one of the better plays on the slate. Pretty solid matchup as well. I like him a good bit at $5,300, but really targeting him and Jared Allen on the side of the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Toronto Raptors are going to be without Pascal Siakam and Yuta Watanabe. Ken Burch started the second half in each of the last 2 games ahead of Precious Achiuwa. They're kind of just splitting pretty evenly those center minutes. I'm not really on Ken Burch, but Precious Achiuwa, though, at $4,200, he has been very good on a per minute basis throughout the year. Even though his minutes are on the decline, I still think that he is viable at $4,200. But again, the center position is so stacked today, probably not looking his way all too much. And then Scotty Barnes is returning. He's priced up too much for me. He should return to his big minutes role, but that really just makes Svi Mikhailuk no longer viable in these slates. The Los Angeles Clippers versus the Minnesota Timberwolves at 216 over under. The Clippers are currently 2.5 point favorites. They are going to be without Kawhi Leonard, Serge Ibaka, Marcus Morris, and Jason Preston. Paul George continues to get disrespected, continues to be very, very low owned. I don't understand it. Never garners any ownership, but we keep playing him. 33.2% usage rating, 12 total rebound percentage, 25.4 assist percentage, while averaging 1.52 fantasy points per minute. And he is averaging over 3 steals per game, so that is obviously very, very good for FanDuel. Gets a pretty good matchup against the Minnesota Timberwolves. Should be competitive. Love Paul George here. And then Ivica Zubac. So actually, we just saw this matchup the other day. And Zubac, you know, the Clippers, they liked to play small, but in this matchup specifically, they gave Ivica Zubac 34.5 minutes, which almost identically matched the minutes of Karl Anthony Towns. So if we are going to see him match his minutes and he's going to continue to play mid-30s minutes, Zubac is only $4,000, one of, if not the best value play on the entire slate. One of the other better values is on the opposite side of this game, but I absolutely love Ivica Zubac. He has averaged 0.95 fantasy points per minute, so nearly 1 fantasy point per minute. And if he's going to play mid-30s minutes, you know, 30 plus fantasy points out of a $4,000 player, I can get behind that. And Zubac has a lot more upside than 0.95 fantasy points per minute. So I love Zubac. I love Paul George here. And then on the Minnesota Timberwolves side, they're going to be without D'Angelo Russell. Again, Patrick Beverley started in place of D'Angelo Russell last game and played 31.5 minutes. He has been very, very good on a per minute basis. throughout all of his games so far this year. Should see 30+ minutes again. $4,000. I mean, you can't get any better of a value option on this slate as of right now, outside of Zubats, Beverly, and Cade Cunningham. You guys can play all three of them and really spend up for guys like Giannis Antetokounmpo. And then on the same team, Karl-Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards, they had a 33.6% usage rating and 34.8% usage rating last game without D'Angelo Russell. That is expected. I think that they are going to play mid to high 30s minutes in this game. Very good spend up options. More secondary spend up options for me, but still definitely in play with no D'Angelo Russell. We get the New Orleans Pelicans versus the Golden State Warriors at 214.5 over under. Warriors are currently 9.5 point favorites. The Pelicans are going to be without Zion Williamson, Dalton Hobbs, Brandon Ingram, and Herbert Jones are questionable. So really, this is the only injury news that we're waiting on throughout the day. Obviously, some random stuff is going to happen between now and lock, I'm sure. But Brandon Ingram is really the only injury news that we're waiting for. And if he is ruled out, obviously it's going to be a very, very big upgrade and boost to guys like Devontae Graham and Jonas Valanciunas. You know, they both kind of disappointed last game. Maybe that was due to them being on the second half of a back-to-back. They started off hot, but tailed off in the second half, and especially the fourth quarter where they scored almost no points. And that's the Pelicans as a whole. If Brandon Ingram is healthy, I'm not really considering anybody on this Pelicans team. The Golden State Warriors are going to be without Klay Thompson, James Wiseman. Gary Payton is questionable. I'm expecting him to play. He was injured last game, ended up returning. Steph Curry is always in play, but not really interested in anybody else on this team. You know, the production is very, very sporadic, especially the closing lineups. It seems to change every single day. Now Gary Payton is playing more in the fourth quarter. I will mention that Damian Lee closes pretty much all of these games out for the Warriors, though. The Charlotte Hornets versus the Sacramento Kings at 231 over under. Kings are 2-point favorites. Now, this is the best game environment in all of on the entire slate, but the prices just are a bit too high for me. PJ Washington is doubtful on the side of the Charlotte Hornets, which makes the minutes for Mason Plumlee very, very secure. We were playing Mason Plumlee when PJ Washington was out. Now with him being doubtful, I'm going to hop back on the train with Mason Plumlee. $5,700 is a fair price tag, and you don't have to play him by any means. There's plenty of good center plays, like I already mentioned on the slate, like Karl-Anthony Towns and Zubats. But he is a pretty good play without PJ Washington. Terry Rozier is actually probably my second favorite play amongst the Draftkings guys from Charlotte, just given his price. I can't really get up to LaMelo Ball and Miles Bridges. They're fine tournament options, definitely viable. But they will cut back LaMelo's minutes sometimes whenever he's dealing or whenever the backups are playing better. It's just a weird situation. Although as of recent, they have been giving him a bit more run. So I don't mind those guys. I like Terry Rozier, the over 28.5 fantasy points over here on PrizePicks. Now, if you guys want to tail me, you can get a 100% match bonus up to $100 instantly in your account to play with. If you sign up and deposit using code Taylor, we've been having a pretty good time over here on PrizePicks. So if you guys want to tail me, we'll actually run a 2-pick right here with Terry Rozier over 28.5 fantasy points and Drew Holiday over 31 fantasy points. I think they both pretty easily hit this. So we'll place that. Hopefully we get 3x our money right there. And then I do have another play. So if you guys watch my videos all the way through, you'll see a 5-pick that you guys can create. And hopefully 10x your money there. I have a play in the last game as well, so make sure to stick around for that. Move over to the Sacramento Kings. They have no injuries. Richaun Holmes' minutes were cut back pretty severely last game. You know, he was ejected early on in the second half, which was unfortunate because I took the over on his second half points on PrizePicks. Yeah, that did not end up going very well. But the minutes are very, very secure for the Sacramento Kings, especially with Marvin Bagley out of the rotation. So guys like Harrison Barnes, De'Aaron Fox, Richaun Holmes, Buddy Hield. I love all these guys in this matchup. They have the highest implied team total on the entire slate. I love the Kings guys today. You could play 2 or 3 of them and feel pretty comfortable with it, just given how many minutes they are playing. You know, Harrison Barnes like 5th in the league averaging over 37 minutes per game. His price obviously has come up to $7,600. Still like him. De'Aaron Fox, Rashawn Holmes, probably my favorite on this slate, on this Kings team. Buddy Hield shortly behind at $5,700. Move over to the last game of the slate, the Indiana Pacers versus the Portland Trailblazers at 223.5 over/under. Trailblazers are currently 4.5-point favorites. The Pacers are going to be without TJ Warren, Isaiah Jackson. Jeremy Lamb is questionable. I'm expecting Jeremy Lamb to sit here. Doesn't really affect all that much from a fantasy perspective, but Caris LeVert being back ruins the value of the entire Indiana Pacers team, but not for himself. His minutes were up to 31 minutes last game, so I think that's a pretty good baseline where he's going to play at least 31 minutes in competitive games with upside of more. This matchup is amazing for Caris LeVert. He has had a 35.8% usage rating so far this year while averaging 1.3 fantasy points per minute. I think 6.8K is probably too cheap for him given the matchup and how many minutes he's likely to play. And his over-under on Prize Picks right now is, if I could find it, it was just on here. No, did they take it away? No, it's definitely still here. They took it away. Wow. Damn. I didn't even get to place my bet. I was leaving that for the video. So, Caris LeVert was at like 31.5 fantasy points, I believe. Did they take everything off? Maybe they have the points still here. Nope, they took Caris LeVert completely off the board. I'm assuming people were hammering the over on Caris LeVert because that was a very good play. I think he's a very good play in DFS, specifically on Draftkings. Then we move over to the Portland Trailblazers. I think everybody is priced fairly appropriately outside of Norman Powell. Since coming back from injury, he's pretty safe to be in that 30 to 34 minute range. Pretty solid matchup as well. $4,700 is probably too cheap for him, but I think he's one of the better value plays on the slate. But again, guys, it is very, very important to be in that live stream an hour before lock. I will be breaking everything down as well as answering as many questions as I possibly can. I appreciate you guys being here. The number one way of supporting me is dropping a like and subscribing. If you guys have any questions at all, make sure to drop them down below. I'll get to as many as I possibly can throughout the day, but I appreciate you guys being here. Best of luck, and until next time, peace.